girls, welcome aboard Yarra, Hamish is my name. We're coming down for the first part of our journey down towards the Bolte Bridge. We're turning to Southgate. That's a half-hour cruise. You guys are all on for the hour, so we probably won't even stop. And then we'll continue on upstream, returning into South Yarra, returning once again. Hi, jackets for everybody. Our located main saloon area just above the head for the fixed seating. 2 life rings, aft deck, coach house roof, 5 buckets extinguishers. Now Grower, she was launched on the 29th of September 1924. Makes her the oldest commercial boat running in Melbourne. She was built originally to work for the Kincumber Growers, a farmers' co-op that operated 2 boats on Bruce's waters in New South Wales. Her job there to transport the produce grown in the area, and she did this until road transportation took over. Leaving Bruce's waters, she headed down the east coast to work out of Sydney as a tug with SG Wine and Marine Engineering Company, moving barges, and been around until 1972. She then worked her way back up the east coast, first arriving in Pittwater and then up to the Clarence River, where she ran between Aluka and Yamba. She became a little small for that job, so she was sold, put aboard a truck and sent here to Melbourne. She's 45 foot long with a beam of 11 foot 6, drawing 3 foot. Now travelling downstream, we will be passing underneath 3 reasonably low bridges. The first coming up is Queen's, then King and Spencer. Please passengers out on the aft deck remain seated for the 3 low bridges coming up ahead, Queen's, King and Spencer. Travelling down, I'll let you enjoy the first part of the journey, and I'll resume the commentary for our return trip to Southgate. If you have any questions though throughout the cruise, please feel free to ask them. Now directly in front of us is the Bolte Bridge, the second largest bridge crossing the Yarra River. The largest is the Westgate, about a mile or so further downstream. The Yarra River from here continues on to one large left-hand sweeping bend before reaching Borthwick Bay. The bay itself then stretches for another 35 miles before reaching the heads out to sea. On the other side of the Bolte Bridge is the commercial port of Melbourne. It's the busiest container port operating in Australia. The container cranes are located around Swanson Dock, the main terminal. 6 large ships in there at any one time. It takes roughly 2 minutes per container to unload. We also have arriving in Melbourne some bulk haulage like oil, sugar, cement, fertilisers, cars, trucks and tractors. The only real export being a bit of scrap steel and grain. Now the original working port of Melbourne was located at Williamstown at the mouth of the Yarra. It boasted a natural deep harbour, and the ships of that era didn't have to navigate up what was then quite a narrow and shallow Yarra River. But eventually Williamstown as a port became too small, and the only option was to send the ships up the river. But before they could do this, they had to dig it all out, and that process was finished off in the 1880s. It was built using a steam shovel, teams of Clydesdale horses and their implements like scoops and graders, hundreds of men, and a narrow gauge railway like Puffin Billy, which took the dirt away. A lot of the dirt ended up on our right-hand side in Port Melbourne, which was naturally a bit of a swamp. So the waterway behind us, as far as you can see, is completely man-made, as is Victoria Harbour, just on the other side of North Wharf to our left. The original place of the Yarra basically near the bridge in the direction, and this one takes the following down Fitzgerald Road. Park there. Now take the marina away, we've got a nice wide section of river built as a turning basin. This is as far inland as the larger seagoing ships came, the diesel ones that is. Basically as they've got bigger and bigger over time, the less distance they've been able to travel up the Yarra. The working depth through here was once about 8-10 metres, these days half that, and we're just on the edge of the natural river course here now. Over on our right is where it's deepest. Now, still to our right, lovely little steamboat there, Brianna, built in Hobart, Tasmania in 1896, where she spent her whole life, including being derelict, and then restored, and brought to Melbourne about a year ago, and really not sure why. She's been sitting there ever since. "65 bridges across the Yarra. The first we'll pass under is an old railway bridge constructed to service Webb Dock at the mouth of the river. Well, it was hardly used as a railway bridge, and has since been converted into quite a handy footbridge, and the steel sculpture work at the right-hand end is representing an Aboriginal eel trap, the local tribe here, the Wurundjeri people. Webb Dock now is a very busy port. In fact, it's quite a modern port, a container port, which is basically automated. The danger foul ground sign on our left just means that there's an object below the water, and if you hit it in a boat, you will lose, and the big pylon will win. Still to our left is a bit of North Wharf, but well, it's slowly but surely being revamped, I suppose, and turned into a 5-star hotel, as well as a bit of permanent accommodation. North Wharf to our left is a more modern area of wharf compared to the area on our right. You can see the different style and sheds, and of course the crane running along the shed on our left, quite handy, but it could lift only 3 tons, which is not much, but a lot of the early cargo was loosely packed in sacks or crates, so it could quite happily pick away at small amounts all day, eventually emptying out the ship. Anything larger, Melbourne, like most ports, had a floating crane capable of lifting up to about 100 tons. South Wharf here now right is been redeveloped with bars, restaurants, cafes, and the head office of the Australian National Line, and underground is the DFO store. I believe ships of all different shapes and sizes once arrived here to unload and load cargo. Horses standing around chomping at the bit, ready to move off and deliver their load. A very busy scene indeed. Now, of course, the first style of ship to arrive was sailing ships, ruling the seas, transporting goods and passengers until something better came along, the era of steam. Steam engines were able to power faster and larger ships right up to the 1960s. We've got a good example of a sailing ship just coming into view on our right now on the Hollywood side. She was in fact launched in Belfast in 1885. She could carry a payload of 600 tons and travel up to a speed of about 12 knots. She first came to Australia in 1900, and by 1903 she was renamed Rona. She started running between Australia and New Zealand, transporting timber. By 1923 the sailing career of the ship was over, converted then into a coal hulk, which means the majority of the sailing rigging was removed, a boiler winch added on deck, and she was towed around the port of Melbourne refuelling the steamships with coal. When this job was no longer required, she was dumped up the Maribyrnong, but not for too long before she was restored back to her current state of condition. She was sitting in one of the original dry docks, the Ducanal. Another large building on the right is Melbourne's Exhibition Centre. The roof is styled off the Wingman aeroplane, the curve in it there, creating enough strength so it's supported only around its perimeter. And recently it was used as a drive-in theatre. The 3 no bridges are coming up ahead now. Spencer, King and Queen. Spencer, the lowest, built in 1930. It's built quite low because in the 1930s there's no need for the ships to travel any further upstream. The river banks either side of us are quite low, and the depression was up and running, so it was the cheapest option to build a bridge straight across. 3 no bridges now, Spencer, King and Queen. turns out here now between King and Queen Street ahead of us. It was a naturally wide a spot at the Yarra because the weir across the river just ahead of us, a natural weir. Upstream from that was fresh water, the very reason as to why this spot was chosen for the township of Melbourne. In fact, the first Melburnians stepped ashore just over there on our left, where the flagpole is today. They in fact arrived here from Tasmania on a schooner called the Enterprise. A full-size replica has been built. She lives at Docklands. Now the weir is no longer across the river. They blew it up, they got rid of it in the 1880s. It was impeding river traffic from running any further upstream, but they also believed it was holding back flood water, creating floods. In the 1840s, Flinders Street on our left continually going underwater. Side is Eureka Tower. They have an observation deck, so you can get up and have a good look around the city from above. Queensbridge, the last of the low ones now, 1889 is when it was built. Well folks, we'll make a brief stop at Southgate and see if there's anybody else on board. Otherwise we'll continue on upstream to our next destination. coast on our right hand side is the old Olympic pool built in Melbourne's 1956 Olympic Games. After this event, it was known as the Glass House, where they held boxing and basketball. Today it's home of one of the AFL football teams. AFL, the major sport in Victoria. The main ground for this, about to come into view on our right, is the MCG, holding 100,000 spectators, first set up in 1883. Now, apart from AFL, it was used for the 56 Olympics, the 2006 Commonwealth Games, International Cricket Rugby World Cup. As passing on the Swan Street Bridge, you'll see clearly a bit of a slide line indicating the river is tidal, rough, and falling 3 feet. Of course, on our right, Rod Laver Arena, where the hold the Australian Centre's open, currently underway, and the MCG there, holding 100,000, first set up in 1883. Now, apart from AFL football, it's been used for the 56 Olympics, 2006 Commonwealth Games, International Cricket Rugby World Cup. Now, the small building just soon our left is the finishing line for the Victorian Rowing Association and the many regattas that are held throughout the year, the biggest, the Henley, first run in 1904. Now, apart from being a rowing regatta in those early days, it was the second most popular social event in town, the biggest, the Melbourne Cup, first race in November. Now, the land on our right is called Burrungma, the latest parklands in the city. The site was once very flat, a good portion of it used for the railways as yards and workshops. There was also a road and tram line running just off the river's edge. The hill coming about from the Citylink Road tunnel we passed over earlier on. Ahead of us, Federation Square, and it was built to celebrate the centenary of Federation. 1901 is when we had the first meeting of Federal Parliament, opened by the Duke and Duchess of Cornwall. The last bridge we'll pass under is Princess, built in 1888. Third bridge across the river at this point to be built, the first, 1847. Prior to any bridges, it was still the crossing point used, as the river there was naturally quite narrow, only around 2 spans of the current 3-span bridge. In fact, in the early days there were timber punts, and he simply pulled himself across the Yarra River. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be arriving at Southgate shortly. Thank you very much for choosing to ride on Grower today. Hopping ashore, please mind your step, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the afternoon and stay in Melbourne. Thanks.
What drinking it up like, Cameron? I think it's 7 drinks, so. Oh, not bad. Yeah. Like that because you have yeah. Oh, fuck it. You need some tear. Probably the other place I worked for a while. They were allowed to drink. Oh, yeah. Given the right circumstances. So, Christmas party, for example, they were playing all down there and they'll have to have a drink. Well, you know, TMH, silly, not that one. Yeah, I've heard about the Christmas party and that. Yeah. Oh, yeah.